welcome. Bienvenidos a todos. My name is Tomas Talamante, and I'm the Deputy Chief of Staff to Mayor Muriel Bowser. We're very excited to have you join us this evening for our Budget Engagement Forum at the beautiful Authur Capper Community Center. Woo! Let's hear a round of applause for that. This is our 5th year of doing Budget Engagement Forums. And it's a very critical first step as we prepare the mayor's budget proposal and we prepare for FY20. We get input from residents across the district on your budget priorities and what you want to see invested in as we make tough decisions and compile and put together the budget proposal that we send to council. This evening, we're very excited. If you participated in the past, you're probably used to our fun budget game. But we're utilizing a new tool and some new technology to get live responses from you in the room. But we also have people watching at home and online. So for those watching at home and online, hello. And you'll be able to participate in today's activities with us using the Poll Everywhere tool. So your facilitator should have helped you log on. But if not, if you have a smartphone or device, you can log on now to the Poll Everywhere tool by going to pollev.com/fairshot or scanning the QR code, which is at all the tables, to get to the website right now. For those of you that don't have a smart device on you, we do have paper copies of the polling questions, and so your facilitator should have distributed those, but if you need some, raise your hand, and we have some of our amazing mokers around who will help pass those out. Great. So tonight is going to be fun. We're going to hear a lot from the mayor as well as many administration officials on our budget process and budget priorities. But we're also going to hear from you. We're going to play some fun games and have a budget pop quiz where you could win a very special prize if you do the best in the quiz. So we're going to actually start off with our first question of the night, where we want to know where you're from. So on your device or laptop or smartphone, you can let us know which ward you are from. As you click your ward, we will start to see green dots pop up representing which ward you are from. It looks like we're seeing people from all 8 wards already, which is fantastic. That is really great. So again, using your smartphone, tablet, or laptop, you can click your ward and let us know which ward you are visiting us here at Authur Capper from. I love it. I think we have all 8 wards represented we do have all 8 wards represented this evening, and still a few more entries coming in. I even see some off the map entries, maybe some Maryland friends. Thank you and welcome to the great city of Washington, D.C. and future 51st state. Great. So as you can see, we have participants today watching at home and here in the room from all 8 wards. And so we're excited to hear from you about your budget priorities and budget issues, as well as make sure that the mayor gets input from you on just those priorities. We're going to go into our next question now. So how many of you, this question is to see how many of you have attended a budget engagement forum before, or if this is your first budget engagement forum. Great. So again, if you've attended one before, or if this is your first budget engagement forum, looks like an overwhelming majority of you, this is your first budget engagement forum. So we want to say first and foremost, welcome. We're excited to hear your input. And for those watching online and at home, welcome if this is your first budget engagement forum as well. Overwhelmingly, 58% of you said this is your first budget engagement forum. So that's very exciting. We're going to go into our next question. This is a fun one. We want to know what word comes to mind when you think about DC's budget. So on the app right now, you can type in what word comes to mind when you think about DC's budget. And as you put in words, the more those words pop up from people entering them, the larger they'll become. So it's a live word cloud. And again, this is what word comes to mind when you're thinking about DC's budget. We're seeing some great words up there. Education. Opportunity is a big one. Complex. I know our housing agencies love saying housing up there. I see confusing. I hope after today it'll be less confusing for those residents. This is great. So as you can see, each of us have different words that we think of when we think about DC's budget, and that reflects the input that we get as we prepare the budget. So we have a complex budget. We have a budget that we want to make sure ensures opportunity and invest in opportunities for residents in all 8 wards. We want to make sure that we're addressing issues like education, housing, but we're also representing our values. And so today you'll hear from the mayor, you'll hear from different administration officials, but as we prepare the budget, as we look to what are those investments that we need to make, those enhancements that we need to make, these are words that we are reflecting on, that we are thinking on, and that we are trying to address those issues. So we have one more question, and then we're going to hear from the mayor. But in order of most important to least important, we want you to rank your budget priorities coming into this meeting. So is it jobs and economic opportunity? Are you here because you want to see more investments in health and human services? Education, government operations? Is public safety your #1 budget priority? Or is housing? So right now, from most important to least important, let us know coming into this meeting what is on your mind as your most important budget issue. Seeing a lot of great responses. Education right now is in the lead. We'll see if that holds. Well, it does look like education, for those in the room and watching online right now, education is your top priority, followed by housing, health and human services. I think Victoria will make the pitch later about improving government operations to a higher ranking. But these are all issues that are extremely important that we will be reflecting on today. And I want you to remember this slide, because we're going to come back to this question. If you all can just, thank you. We're going to come back to this slide and do this poll question one more time after you've heard from the mayor, our deputy mayors, to see if your budget priorities have changed after some of our activities today. But without further ado, I want to bring up our great mayor, Mayor Muriel Bowser.
Well, good evening, everybody. I am really happy to see you all here and to kick off our budget engagement forums out in the community. I'm very proud to say that this is the 5th straight year that we have started the budget engagement process with these forums. Some of you may have already heard me say that one of my priorities when becoming mayor was to switch the civic engagement portion of the budget development process. I, as a council member, was always concerned that the mayor didn't go out to present the budget until after the mayor submitted the budget to the council. And at that point, there are some things that are movable in the budget, but a lot of big decisions have already been made. So we made a point of making sure we start that budget engagement process earlier so that we can get as much feedback from the community as we build this budget. I am delighted that so many members of my team, our agency directors, the mayor's budget office, the city administrator, have already been working on the budget since November, building priorities, working with our chief financial officer, and already hearing from many of you about what those priorities are. We have another aspect of the engagement in addition to these 3 sessions is I start off the engagement process with a telephone town hall with senior residents, and we have completed that telephone town hall. We have also completed a telephone town hall with district government employees. And in that town hall, we collect information, ideas, challenges, savings, enhancement ideas as well. Residents will have 2 additional opportunities to participate in one of our engagement forums. This Saturday morning, we will be at the Deanwood Recreation Center in Ward 7, and on Monday evening, we will be at Roosevelt Senior High School in Ward 4. The forums are key for a couple of reasons. We talk about how the budget's built. We talk about all the major components of our budget. We talk a little bit about the revenue that comes in to allow us to fund our budget priorities. And then we ask you to do the very difficult work of helping us make some priority decisions. For the last 4 years, we have had an exercise called the $100 game. And the $100 game was meant and is meant for you to think about our $14+ billion budget as you think about your own budgets at home. And while there are many bigger numbers that we're dealing with as a government, the idea is the same. You have a certain amount of money coming in, and you have a certain amount of things that you must and want to do with that money. In some months, you make trade-offs. Some years you have more, some years you have less. Sometimes you decide to earn more, or sometimes somebody else has decided that you will earn less. And in any case, you have to take care of the things that you have to take care of, and you're thinking about all the additional things that you want to provide for yourself and for your family. Well, our budget starts with our values, the things that we need to do as a city, and then we look always, every year, for fresh ideas around the government for the things that we want to fund. The truth is, our government has come a very long way since the days of the control board, where our finances were literally so bad that we were taken over by the Congress in many ways. And since then, we have been very disciplined in the work that we have done. We have made critical investments in public education and public safety and in the human services that have allowed our city to be the envy of many cities around the world, that we're financially strong, that we're growing, and that our taxpayers give us the ability to make the types of investments in our people that will allow us to continue to grow and to grow more equitably. And that is the challenge that I have given my team this year, to allow us to continue to be financially strong and grow, but to do even more to make investments in the people of the District of Columbia, especially in the people in the neighborhoods who have not had access to as much investment and opportunity as everyone else. And we, I say to you, ladies and gentlemen, have the ability to do that in a city as prosperous as ours. Do you agree? So we also have an opportunity because we are at a start of a new term, a new 4 years for our administration. We're working, many of the council members have, 7 in fact, have started a fresh 4-year term as well. And we share a vision that we will make our city grow more equitably. In my first term, we made really big investments in ending homelessness, in our schools, in our teachers. We invested in our workforce development programs and in programs that help our seniors age in place. We made it more affordable to raise a family in DC through investments in our home buyer programs and in child care. And we made historic investments in our Housing Production Trust Fund. And this year, we will help to deliver. We will cross the 7,000 mark in terms of the units of affordable housing that we have produced or preserved in 4 years. And because, that's good news, I think. Because of these commitments, we have also been able to close DC General, open 3 smaller, more service-oriented short-term housing facilities with 3 more on the way. We built 2 new arenas in our city that help brandish our reputation as the sports capital, but also have built jobs and created opportunities for DC residents and businesses. And we had the resources that we needed to advance our DC values, protect our DC values, when a new president moved into our White House. But most importantly, we have been able to step up and support Washingtonians, and most recently, I should say, during the longest federal government shutdown in the history of our nation's capital. So now that we start on this new 4 years, we are well positioned to build on the progress that our city has made, but we also have the opportunity to think bigger and bolder. And that's part of my challenge to you this evening. You may have heard me already say that we have to establish a new housing goal. We need to build 36,000 new units of housing throughout the district by the year 2025. You may have also heard me say that the tools we have in our toolbox right now won't get us there. So we need to all be thinking about what we need to do differently to get to more housing in our city that will make housing more affordable for people of all incomes. And tonight is an opportunity for me to hear from you about exactly that. So I won't pretend that the decisions aren't tough, but I rely on this feedback that you give me to make some of the important trade-offs that come with any budgeting process. So we will finish our budget in early March. We will submit that budget to the Council of the District of Columbia. They will have a whole nother set of engagement as well. And then at the end of the process, we will have a balanced budget. We will be able to talk about how we are using our resources strategically and responsibly and investing in the city that we love. So I want to thank you for taking this time out of your evenings. Tell your neighbors and friends that there are additional opportunities. And I also want to thank members of my team who are here tonight. You are going to hear from the deputy mayors. They're going to tell you what's going on in their clusters and why you should invest in the priorities that they represent. Our agency directors will go around to tables to ask questions. And then I will also hear your feedback at the end. I wanted to acknowledge members of my administration and cabinet officials who are here. Where are you? Give a wave and give them our appreciation. I wanted to acknowledge a new member of our team who is leading DCPS, Dr. Lewis Farabee. Dr. Farabee, please stand up so people can see you. And then I think we're going to hear next from Tomas. Thank you, Tomas.
Thank you so much, Mayor. Let's have another round of applause for Mayor Bowser. We'll be hearing from the mayor one more time when we close out this evening, but before we go on to our next portion, I do want to acknowledge our Ward 6 Councilmember Charles Allen, who's joined us this evening. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us, Councilmember. Now we're going to hear from Jenny Reed, who's our budget director, and our city administrator, Rashad Young. They're going to discuss the budget process and how we formulate the budget and then send over the budget proposal to council. So without further ado, Jenny Reed.
Thank you, Tomas. Good evening, everyone. My name is Jenny Reed, and I have the pleasure of serving as the Mayor's Director of Budget and Performance Management. I'm here to talk to you a little bit about some of the key investments we've made in the most recent budget, a little bit about the budget process, and where some of our money goes. So first, let me start with some key investments that the Mayor made in her FY19 budget, which is the current fiscal year that we're in right now. When it comes to education, we made one of the largest investments in public education in the city's history, including a $93 million increase in funding for DC public schools and DC public charter schools. We increased funding for childcare, instituted a new tax credit for families with young children, expanded out-of-school time and summer programming, invested more money into our school facilities to make them more modern and better for our kids. And importantly, we added $575,000 to the budget in FY19 to make this very community center, the Authur Capper Center, open to the public under DPR's portfolio and increase programming for the community. Yes. We also invested a significant amount of money in housing in our Safe at Home program to make sure that our seniors are able to age safely in their homes. $100 million continued investment in the trust fund, more money for preservation, more money to move forward our Homer DC plan to make homelessness rare, brief, and non-recurring. We invested in violence prevention strategies by continuing to invest in our new Office of Neighborhood and Safety Engagement and putting more money into violence prevention funding and pathways programs to help some of our most vulnerable residents graduate with great jobs. And lastly, we are investing in our infrastructure. So we put $430 million into the budget to improve our sidewalks, our roads, and our alleys so that we're able to eliminate those assets that are in poor condition by 2021. So a little bit about our budget process. Our fiscal year runs from October 1st to September 30th. And I want to go through a little bit about the budget development cycle and how you all fit into this process. So you can see from the slide, we're in the first part of preparation. As the Mayor mentioned, we start our process for the FY20 budget in November of 2018. And we do that by engaging with our agencies and starting to get their proposals and their ideas for what increases they think we should see in the budget. We then go to our community engagement, which is where we are right now. We hear from residents through forums, through town halls, through all sorts of ways about what your priorities are. And then we take all of that input and we work with the mayor and the city administrator and we put forward the mayor's budget. This year, we will deliver the mayor's budget on March 20th to the DC Council. And then it will turn over to the DC Council where they will hold a series of hearings and meetings to discuss the proposals. This is another opportunity where you can get involved, particularly if you see something that you like and really support. We'd appreciate you telling the DC Council about that. After the council has the budget, they pass on the final votes and it becomes enacted. And then we go to the execution and accountability side. And that's where my team comes back into play, where we try to make sure that agencies are spending to their budget, making sure they're delivering the programs and services that we promised you, and making sure that we're tracking those outcomes in that data so that they're staying on track. So a little bit about our budget. I think you've heard the mayor mention a couple times, our budget is pretty big. It's $14.6 billion. And it is true, it is very complex. One of those reasons is that we are a city, state, and county all in one. So we do all of those services all at the same time. Our operating budget is broken down into about three parts. So we have about $10.5 billion of local funds, and that includes some special purpose funds like fees and fines that you might pay, and enterprise funds like funds we use to fund that pass through our budget for DC Water. We have about $3.5 billion in federal grants, including Medicaid payments, and we have about just over $500 million in dedicated taxes. All of these sources make up our $14.6 billion operating budget. And this is what we use to fund the majority of programs and services that you all utilize, our employees, our day-to-day operations. But we also have a capital budget. The capital budget is $1.7 billion for the current fiscal year and about $8 billion over a 6-year capital improvements plan period. This is what we use to do things like modernize our facilities, so building new schools, renovating rec centers, also fixing roads and alleys and sidewalks. So it's a really important part of our budget. And this is a little bit about where those dollars go. So these are our gross funds expenditures, meaning it's our federal dollars, it's our local dollars, it's all the money we have in that $14.6 billion pot. So you can see the biggest share of those dollars goes to Health and Human Services. And part of the reason that share is so large is this is where our Medicaid funding comes into play. So we have excellent healthcare coverage in the District of Columbia thanks to the expansions of healthcare services that we've done. And a lot of healthcare dollars flow through this $5 billion. Our next largest area is education, where we have about $2.7 billion, both for public schools, public charter schools, but also our library system, our University of District of Columbia, and other agencies. We spend about $1.4 billion on public safety. This helps fund the Fire and Emergency Medical Services Department, our Metropolitan Police Department, our Office of Unified Communications, the people who answer the phone when you call 911 or 311. We spend about $1.8 billion in government operations and other services. This is where our public works are, so the Department of Public Works that pick up your trash and clear the snow. It's also where your Department of Human Resources that helps hire people into DC government job sits. We then have about $442 million for jobs and economic opportunity. This is for our Department of Employment Services, our Deputy Mayor for Planning and Economic Development, our Department of Small and Local Business. And then we have about $400 million in housing. This includes our Housing Production Trust Fund, some of the housing supports that we provide for our Homer DC plan, as well as some support for the DC Housing Authority. It isn't all the money we spend on housing. There's lots of money out there through other supports, through the Housing Authority and other areas, but this is in our gross funds budget. So now I'm going to pause and turn it over to the city administrator, who's going to go in a little more depth with you about some of the priorities that we're focused on in the current fiscal year. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny, and good evening. I am Rashad Young, the City Administrator for the District of Columbia. I'm going to talk a little bit about our priorities and expound on some of the comments that Jenny made about where we are making investments. The budget is the best reflection of the priorities and to determine what matters most to us as a community as we look at where we spend our resources. So there are a number of priorities that we are focused on in the current fiscal year, certainly education being chief among them, and our goal here is to really accelerate the improvements of educational outcomes for our students in both public schools and our charter schools. We want to increase investments in seniors, and we have a number of programs and initiatives where we are investing additional resources to support our seniors, expand our reach in health and human services, strengthen public safety, provide safe and efficient transportation, continue to ensure access to jobs and opportunity, and we continue to make substantial investments in infrastructure in our community spaces. Talking a little bit about where those investments are in each of these categories, and you've heard some of this in Jenny's presentation, but we spend about $2.7 billion in education for some of the things that you see on the screen. $93 million more dollars to support our DCPS and DCPS public charter schools, about $1.7 billion for educational services for both sectors that support 91,000 students in DCPS and our charter schools, $87 million for programs and services at the University of the District of Columbia and our community college, $61 million for library services and support for our 26 libraries, about $41 million for parks and recreation programming, including our summer and out-of-school programs, $19 million specifically for our out-of-school programs, which represents a tremendous investment and increase over what we were able to do in fiscal year 18. And of course, Jenny mentioned the $575,000 that allowed us to operate the Authur Capper Community Center, which is obviously where we are tonight. In the health and human services space, we spend, again, $5 billion for all of those activities, the largest being about $3 billion for Medicaid. But in addition to that, we've invested $1.6 million to fund a pilot intervention to reduce preterm births and improve health outcomes for infants. That is a clappable item, I think. $7.4 million to increase school-based nursing and mental health services in our schools in the district, $5.3 million to assist seniors and low-income residents with heat and energy bills, and an additional $29 million to help support our plan to reduce homelessness and make it rare, brief, and non-recurring. So $29 million, nearly $30 million for the implementation of Homeward DC. And we invested $7 million in this fiscal year to help residents with their water bills that's worth the clap as well, right? To help residents with their water bills due to the increased stormwater charges that they are experiencing. In public safety, we spent about $1.4 billion. $1.5 million of that is for our non-law enforcement and community-based grants for violence interruption to help make our neighborhoods safer. $500,000 for our security rebate program, so residents and businesses can install security cameras in their homes or in their communities. $2.4 million to support the hiring of 42 additional firefighter paramedics, and $1.7 million to expand our police cadet program from 70 to 100 positions, which allows us to be able to recruit DC residents to be police officers in the District of Columbia. In the housing space, it was about $402 million, but this doesn't, as Jenny mentioned, represent all of our investment in housing, but $100 million in the Housing Production Trust Fund to continue to produce affordable units all across the district. $3.7 million to make sure that our tenants' rights are upheld, $10 million for the Housing Preservation Fund so that we can have existing housing and maintain its affordability for our residents, and $24 million to help residents afford a down payment so that they can buy a home in the District of Columbia. In the jobs and economic opportunity space, we spent $33 million to support our cultural arts programs, $2 million for entrepreneurs so they can start new businesses in the district, $19 million for the Mayor Marion S. Berry Summer Youth Employment Program, which provides employment opportunities for young people, including those over 21 during the summer break. $10 million for job training programs that support our residents with barriers to employment, and $6.4 million in apprenticeship programs that help lead people to having good middle-class jobs in the district. In the government operations space, we spend $7.4 million for snow removal. Some of that money we spent yesterday to tackle the weather event in snow. $952,000 to support our efforts to become the 51st state in the United States through our statehood public education campaign, and $10.9 million to demolish DC General, which we were able to close this year. For our seniors, which remain a key priority for us, Jenny mentioned the Safe at Home program that really helps our residents and our seniors to be able to age in place in their own homes. Nearly $6 million to provide 257,000 rides for our seniors to make their various appointments and doctor's appointments, $11.4 million for a new wellness center in Ward 8, and $26 million to fund 50 new permanent supportive housing units for senior women. And we also were able to cut in half how much our seniors' property taxes can go up each year, so that if they qualify for our reduced property tax rate, their property tax can't grow by more than 5% a year. And that's another way that we are working to keep seniors in their own homes who have invested and stayed in the District of Columbia. So we have, as has been mentioned at the beginning, a big, a complex, sometimes confusing budget that is full of over $14 billion worth of resources to support the priorities that this community says are important and make sure that the programs and services that you want and that are certainly that are in the vision of the mayor can be delivered to the residents of the District of Columbia. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Tomas, who will move us to the next phase of our discussion.
All right, thank you so much to the city administrator and Jenny Reed for that great presentation on our budget process and overview on how we've spent the funds in the past. We're going to do pop quiz time. So again, I flagged for you all at the beginning that we would do a pop quiz after to see if you all were paying attention. So if you would pull out your devices and tablets, I'm excited to live my game show host fantasy right now. We're going to do DC budget. And again, there's going to be a little reward at the end for the participant that does the best in our DC Budget 101 pop quiz. So we're going to start out with our first question, if you will. Question number 1. What is the District of Columbia's fiscal year? October 1st through September 30th, January 1st through December 31st, September 30th through October 1st, or June 1st through May 31st? What is the District of Columbia's fiscal year? We got about 10 more seconds for people to answer. I can see the people that took notes right away were. The answer is October 1st through September 30th. So about 85% of you got that right. Congratulations. So here's the cool part of this technology. We have a leaderboard. So if we go to the leaderboard right now, CMS is leading right now. So these are our top leaders. So we will see if you stay in the top spot after the next question. So let's go to question number 2. How much is DC's FY19 operating budget for programs and services? And again, that's our operating budget. That's our day-to-day operations. Is that 10.9 billion, 11.9 billion, 12.9 billion, or 14.6 billion? Let's see if our leaders can stay in the lead with that one. Got about 7 more seconds to put in your answer. All right, it is 14.6 billion. So 77% of you got that right. Who got that right? Let me hear it. Woo! So let's see, leaderboard is changing. Well, Josh moved up. Congratulations to Josh. AV, Andrew Pratt, we got some good results up there. Now we're going to question number 3. How much is the district's FY19 capital budget? Again, that's long-term assets. So think of this building we're in right now. Think of school modernization. Is that 1.7 billion, 2.3 billion, 3.3 billion, or 4.3 billion? And where's Josh at? Josh, are you going to stay on the leaderboard? We got about 10 more seconds on that one. What is the FY19 capital budget? What was the FY19 capital budget? The answer is 1.7 billion. So 65% of you got that right just now. So congratulations. Now let's see the leaderboard. Oh, Andrew moved up to the top. Good job, Andrew. All right, one final question. Which of the following areas is allocated the largest percentage of the budget? Is it jobs and economic opportunity, education, health and human services, government operations, public safety, or housing? Again, which gets the largest share of our budget? Got about 7 more seconds to see. All righty. It's health and human services. So 68% of y'all got that right. All right, here's our final leaderboard. Let's see who took home the prize. Woo, Jonita. Congratulations. Raise your hand. Stand up. Let's see you. Woo. Stand up so everyone can see you who took it home. So if you're on the leaderboard, please see the registration desk after today's forum. We're going to hook you up with some baseball or basketball tickets. So thank you so much. It's a fun thing. So now we're going to get to hear from our deputy mayors before we go into our next section. Our great deputy mayors and two of our amazing directors are going to talk a little bit more about the investments in their cluster and give you a little bit of a preview of some themes as we look to FY20. I want you to pay attention to this portion because we're going to then go into a discussion about your budget priorities. And the mayor and our deputy mayors are going to make rounds and listen to you about your FY20 budget priorities, some of your FY20 fresh ideas. I know we got some great fresh ideas during our senior telephone town hall. So we're going to start that section now. So first, we're going to hear from our Deputy Mayor of Health and Human Services, our interim Deputy Mayor, Deputy Mayor Wayne Turnage. Wayne.
Good evening. This has been a rather consequential year for the Health and Human Services, and I'm going to spend just a couple of minutes to explain why I believe that as you consider your budget priorities, you should lean heavily on the work that we do in Health and Human Services. The themes that underlie the work that we do are addressing the very challenging and vexing problem of homelessness, improving the quality of life for our seniors, and supporting families. Think about some of the achievements that the mayor has been able to accomplish because of the priorities that have been tilted towards those themes. You've heard that we've closed DC General, and what made that possible were the investments that she made in short-term housing in wards 4, 7, and 8. We all know that short-term housing is a much better place to be than housing in DC General, and so if you want to see those kinds of investments to continue, we need you to consider that as you walk through, think through your budget priorities. We also have plans to create a new $40 million men's shelter with service-enriched programming at 801 East Main Street, at the East End Men's Shelter. And if you think about all of the investments that we've made since the mayor took office, we can tell you that homelessness alone, family homelessness, has decreased by 40%, and we've reduced overall homelessness by 17%. We will also hope to continue to make big investments in our seniors. The emphasis that the mayor has placed on our seniors is allowing them to live with quality at home, away from some of the large institutions that can be sometimes depressing for those who are away from family. In response to that, we've made $16 million in investments in Safe at Home. These are basically adaptations that will allow seniors who may be struggling with some of the activities of daily living to adapt and stay at home. As a result, we now know that 1,000 seniors have these adaptations, and they are living comfortably in their homes. If you want us to be able to continue that, we need your support. We are also investing heavily in strengthening families. And the way to think about those investments are children, families, and a focus on some of the things that children and families need to be successful. We have a very unique TANF program where we've ensured that children are always protected in the grant process. We have invested dollars to prevent families from suddenly losing money when the time allotment that the federal government places on TANF benefit hits. And we've invested $7.4 million in our schools to ensure that our kids have better access to school-based mental health services. And finally, we have to focus on health care. If a city is to prosper, its residents must be healthy. And as a result, the mayor has made significant investments in health care across the city. If you look at how the district covers its residents compared to other states in the country, we cover 98% of our residents with health insurance. That is the second highest rate in the country. If we're going to continue, If we are to continue those investments, we need your support in tilting your priorities to focus on healthcare. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Turnage. And he gave you quite the pitch because he wants to make sure he keeps that the biggest piece of the budget pie. Next, we'll hear from Deputy Mayor Paul Kine, Deputy Mayor for Education.
Is this working?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Surprise, I'm over here. It is an honor to serve as Mayor Bowser's Deputy Mayor for Education and to share with you some of the priorities that we have invested over the first term and give you a sense of some of the thematic areas that we're looking at for the next term. I don't consider this a pitch because I think when we're talking about children, we know they are the biggest priority. Who here does not support children? Okay, that's why we're the top of the table. Over the past 4 years, the mayor has made an incredible investment in early childhood. And as you can see from the chart, we have invested in creating more than 1,000 additional seats for children. In addition, we have worked very hard to continue to try to honor and compensate our teachers and our educators to the degree that they deserve. And lastly, over the first term, we have continued to modernize our buildings to create world-class learning spaces for all of our children and all of our students in the schools. We have done a tremendous amount of work. We continue to see the additional learning that our students are doing, and we continue to feel as though we have a lot more work to do. In the spirit of looking forward, we think about 3 big areas that we want to continue to invest in. The first is making sure that every single child is ready for school. Every 5-year-old in the district needs to arrive into kindergarten with the academic skills and the school-appropriate behaviors that they need in order to be successful. And we will continue to focus on our little kids, the babies, the 0 to 3-year-olds, as well as our pre-K classrooms. Secondly, for those students who are in school, our second area is making sure that they are ready to learn. And the way in which we want to continue to do that is to ensure that we provide the in-school and out-of-school supports for all children to ensure that they have what it requires to be successful in school. We will continue to focus on our community schools as well as other trauma-informed interventions to see that happen. We also want to continue to provide the adults in our buildings, our honored teachers and school leaders, with what they need to be successful. Lastly, then, in terms of our thematic areas, we are focused on making sure that every single young person coming out of our schools is ready for career. We anchor on the idea that every resident of the District of Columbia needs to be ready for a middle-income career by middle age, to make sure that they have the skills that they need, that our secondary schools support them in doing that, and that our workforce and job training programs are fair and equitable, particularly for our underserved communities. So for education, as you think about investments, ready for school, ready to learn, and ready for career.
Great. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. We will now go to Deputy Mayor Kevin Donahue, the Deputy Mayor for Public Safety and Justice.
Okay. This is my 13th budget engagement forum, which means it's like the beginning of my 5th year. So this is the first time I get to look back and usually making it and when I think about big investments that we made over the past 4 years, I really think about in 2015 when I started this work, a number of memories that I had. One of them was that we had to recognize early on that we had some critical functions that simply need to get stabilized and get good again. We had to shut down part of our forensic crime lab because of lost accreditation. We had 911 callers who were calling and getting visits because we realized that the city had not hired a new 911 caller in 8 years. And then ambulances, we had the same number of ambulances going on the street every day for 15 years. So when I realized this, I told our 911 call director, can you send me a text whenever we run down to 3 ambulances or less? The next day, I started to get Hello. Was I the only one hearing myself talk? I have one supporter here. Okay. I'm going to pretend everyone heard that. It was very eloquent. So just imagine the past 60 seconds as being better than what you're about to hear. So I was talking about the first couple of years we had to stabilize basic investments. I used to get texts every time we ran out of an ambulance. So the first item there you see was just stabilizing our emergency response to 911. We hired 56 new call takers between 911 and 311. We have $12 million annually that we spend on more ambulances, so we put out the same number every day for 15 years. And this led to what was now a 97% availability rate that was a 70% availability rate. Similar story with MPD. We had a declining number of officers, making it more difficult for officers to do anything but run from call to call. And so we invested in the cadet program. We invested in incentives for people who live in DC to join the MPD, and once they come here, to actually stay in DC once they were an officer. And then 2 weeks ago, recognizing the need to bring services to our returning citizens, we opened something called the Ready Center. And the Ready Center is a building that we built right behind the DC jail. And instead of asking returning citizens to go to all DC government agencies, we are bringing them to them at the DC jail so they can get, thank you. In the course of public safety, I rarely get that, so I'm very happy. We have DMV on site who takes photos and prints and gives people ID before they leave. We have DBH, who's not far away, but they're actually on site and can start counseling there. And we have job resource connections that are on site. And finally, out of the NEAR Act, we stood up the Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement. And this is really moving from stabilizing those core services to doing things that are new and innovative. Dell McFadden, the director, is here in the room, and what that office does is it identifies individuals who have been caught up in violence, recognizes that we have to meet them where they are in their life, recognizes their barriers, and brings job services to them, therapy services to them, and allows for them to carve out their own path, and we support them as they achieve what their human potential is. So moving forward, there's two themes. So first of all, when you started out, you did the priority list. I think public safety was fifth. And there's advantages for public safety being fifth and not first. And part of that is recognizing that if we were to really transform and reduce violence in the city, schools is a key, behavioral health is a key, access to jobs is a key. So I'm happy to see all those things that are much more part of the root causes of violence being numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4. But there are two things to keep in mind. One is that we have just started something like the ONES office, which I consider to be in its infancy and has to grow. And the second item is the way for everyone here to get what they want is to grow the size of the pie. And if you have a city, in other words, the revenues. So if you have a city that is safe, you have a city that provides the foundations and conditions to be able to develop more of a tax base for everyone to be able to have the funding they want and not to make the kind of trade-offs that you're going to be able to have to ask, that you're going to be asked to make later tonight. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. We will now hear from Victoria Wasmer, who are Director of Agency Operations.
I know I have my work cut out for me because government operations was in the last place. Now, I'm not necessarily going to think that I'm going to move up to first, but I would love to just increase that percentage. So I'm going to try and give a pitch. Who really appreciated having the snow removed yesterday so that folks could get back to work and to school today? We have learned a lot, and we've done a tremendous amount in our snow preparedness. We have a snow team. They meet every year with a snow summit, and it brings together over 1,200 folks who try to ensure that we can do early alerts and then be on top of the storm as it's coming in. It's Department of Public Works, it's our District Department of Transportation, and our Homeland Security and Emergency Operations Group, who are really the three tiers of ensuring that we're prepared and we can clear and get folks back to work and to school. Primary, of course, is safety and the safety of the residents, and that's where sometimes the mayor has to make the tough call when we have to shut down the government. But the goal is to ensure that we can get folks back to work, because every day that we lose, and we saw this of course, with the federal government shutdown, there's a reduction in what we have in our productivity and in our economy and in folks being able to have the wages that they need to be able to have to support their families. So I just want to say the snow budget is a really necessary budget. We're trying to stay on top of it and making sure that we use those resources wisely. The fleet was very old, and in fact, that's one of the areas in our capital investment that we've been putting in order to be able to replace the fleet of the snow removal vehicles and the heavy equipment that's necessary to put that in place. Sometimes we have to hire third-party contractors, and in fact, we've put in smarter contract vehicles in order to be able to maximize the district dollar. The second thing I wanted to talk about was another top priority for our Department of Motor Vehicles. In fact, they've just this past year put in place the opportunity for folks when they go forward to register for your driver's license or for your state ID card, the ability to register to vote, and it's called auto enrollment. Just in less than a year of that program being in place, we've had 50,000 folks who've enrolled to register to vote when they've gotten their DC ID card or driver's license. And in fact, I'll tell you a little story. My son, Christoph, my youngest son, turned 18 last year. He was able to go to the polls with me and my mom and go ahead and make his vote there at our polling place at Czech. Because he had been auto-enrolled after getting his driver's license. So I think everybody being able to do their civic duty, having an increase in our abilities of our residents to really make their voices known in the voting process is so critical and so important, and tying those things together, I think, is a tremendous benefit to the district. Thank you. And I see Director Babbers, who's here, who heads our Department of Motor Vehicles. And of course, this was under her tenure putting this in place. Thank you. The last thing I'm going to talk about really briefly is just the ability to ensure that we have accessible spaces, both our parks, our recreation facilities, in fact, our election polling places, but also our schools. And in fact, the Americans with Disabilities Act is going to be celebrating its 30th anniversary next year. And in advance of that, we're going to ensure that all of our recreation facilities have been evaluated in terms of its accessibility and putting in place the ability to ensure that as those get modernized, we allow for that to be fully accessible by all of our residents. This is a really important thing for schools, and in fact, every time we modernize a school building, we ensure that it is going to be compliant with the American with Disabilities Act. And then I'm going to hand it over, I think, back to Tomas.
And last but certainly, thank you, Victoria. And last and certainly not least, our Acting Director of the Office of Planning, Andrew Trueblood.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Hi, I'm Andrew Trueblood, the Acting Director of the Office of Planning. I am here on behalf of Deputy Mayor Brian Kenner, who is actually out on the West Coast tonight, thinking about how we can grow our taxes and figure out how to spend more money on our investments in the future by helping local DC businesses expand there and grow our jobs here. So I am here to talk a little bit about economic development, which is a number of things. Economic development is infrastructure. Over the last 4 years, we've had a laser focus on making sure that our sidewalks, our roads, and our alleys are in a state of good repair, spending over $200 million on that, and looking to continue that into the future. We broke ground on our biggest infrastructure project, the Frederick Douglass Bridge, South Capitol Street Bridge, which will be open by 2021. And it also includes environment. We had green jobs through our Solar City DC program. We started a green bank, and we also made incredible strides towards a swimmable Anacostia. And Tommy just told me, Tommy Wells, the Director of the Department of Energy and Environment, that he looks forward to swimming in the Anacostia in a few short years. In addition, economic development is jobs, it's small businesses, it's retail, it's fresh food access, and it's culture. And up here you see a number of those investments we've made, invested in over 300 small businesses through our Great Streets program. We have clean teams in every ward of the district. We had a neighborhood prosperity fund program that has funded a community grocery store in Ward 8 in the Bellevue neighborhood. And we've made big investments in culture and hope to look forward to a cultural plan and cultural investments coming out in the future. So the final piece of it, which is economic development, but it's also really its own category, which is housing. And you've seen that pulled out in a couple of the other slides. Housing is an incredibly important priority. It's been an important priority for the mayor over the last 4 years, almost $500 million invested in projects to preserve and produce almost 5,000 units in the District of Columbia. But there's other programs too. $13 million for Safe at Home that you've heard about for seniors to make sure that they can age in place in their homes. $60 million for down payment assistance so that DC residents can become first-time home buyers. So there are a number of important programs in the housing, within that housing bucket. And there's certainly a lot that we have done. We've done more. We've invested more per capita than any other city through our Housing Production Trust Fund. But there's, as the mayor mentioned, there's more to do. And we look forward to thinking bigger and bolder in the next 4 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to our deputy mayors and our directors for those great pitches. We're going to go now into our next part, which we're going to hear from you. So to queue up our table discussions, we're going to vote one more time on, now that you've heard from our great deputy mayors, the mayor, our city administrator, and our budget director, we want to know, as looking to FY20, what is your most important budget priority? So if you would vote on that right now, and then we're going to open it up to the tables to discuss amongst yourselves your budget priorities, why you're here. If your budget priorities changed after you heard from our deputy mayors and our directors, and then we're going to call on some tables to let the mayor know some of your budget priorities. The mayor and our deputy mayors will be circling around and listening to you about your priorities. So give it a few more. Oh, neck and neck, housing and education. All right, we'll give it a few more seconds. All right, well, education remains number one even after the pitches, so that's great to hear. But these are your priorities that you are saying as we look to FY20. This is what you are saying are our priorities. Victoria, government operations coming in last again, but you made a great pitch. So now amongst your tables, we're going to open it up for you all to discuss what your budget priorities are for FY20, some of your fresh ideas. The deputy mayors and the mayor will be making some rounds, and then in about 5 minutes, we're going to call on some tables to give us some of their ideas. Following that, we'll have one more budget scenario where we'll put some tough options up for you. So as the mayor said, when she is discussing the budget, when her and council are looking at the budget, they have to make some tough decisions. So we're going to put some of those tough decisions in your hands, and then we'll hear it one more time from the mayor. So again, let's chat about your budget priorities for FY20. Thank you.
Programs to make buildings much more efficient so that we can, if this is implemented properly, we will reduce our greenhouse gas emissions in DC by 50%.
Good evening, everyone. My name is John Falchicchio. I'm Mayor Bowser's Chief of Staff, and just want to thank you for coming. I'm a Ward 6 resident, so thanks for being in my home ward. Anybody else from Ward 6? All right, good number of folks from Ward 6. Fantastic. So what we want to do now is we want to hear from some of the tables about how your priorities stacked up to the ones that you see on the screen. Do you think the whole group got it right, or did your table have something a little bit different? So why don't we hear from some of the tables? Does any of the tables want to volunteer to do it? Wow, table 12 popped up real fast. So we'll hear from table 12, and then let's hear from one or two more tables about how your priorities stacked up against the ones up on the screen. And when you start, tell us your name and what ward you live in, and then go to your presentation. Okay. So table 12.
Hello, my name is Jamie Holland, representing Ward 2, as well as Miriam's Kitchen and the Way Home campaign. Table 12 had a very passionate discussion, feeling very passionate about the need to work on violence intervention in our communities, increase dramatically mental health services in schools in order to address trauma and increase preventative care before it needs to become reactionary. We talked about investing $30 million for birth to 3 services, and also investing $35.5 million to end chronic homelessness in our city. Ending chronic homelessness is within reach and possible, and we want to strongly urge the city to make it happen in this mayor's second term. We also were asked to choose where to find the money and asked to choose which services we would want to reduce in order to increase the services we were advocating for. We challenged back to that by saying that shouldn't be, we shouldn't need to rob Peter to pay Paul. We should be able to increase revenue, increase the size of the budget. We could do that by looking at different revenue streams, including the current Homestead Deduction Act that is going through City Council. We are not in support of that because we think that the proposed budget, the proposed legislation is stating that it would lose the city about $38 million, and that $38 million could be the $38 million to end chronic homelessness. So we strongly encourage the DC not to increase revenue, to look stronger for different tax ways to increase revenue, and to urge for our other priorities.
Great. All right, good report from table 12. All right, which table wants to counter that or agree with it? Any other tables? Which other ones? One in the back. Steve, what are you at? Table 6.
Hi, everyone. Hello. My name is Christina, and I live in Ward 6. I'm actually a DC native, and one of the things that we talked about is increasing a priority in public safety and specifically for witness protection programs. You know, when people feel safe in their community, they get more active in their community. But if they feel like they're going to face retaliation and retribution if they report unlawful activity, they're not going to want to come out of their homes. They're not going to want to talk to, you know, all of the wonderful representatives that are here. They're just going to be really afraid, and it's sad to see a great city like this and have people hiding behind closed doors because they don't feel like they can speak out against things that might tear down their community. So I would really love to see us invest in more witness protection resources all the way from the reporting process down to relocation. You know, obviously if there's other things that need to happen for people who witness things or who may be connected to other people that are involved in unlawful activity, that's a big priority for me. But I know that I've seen that happen throughout my childhood when I grew up, and when people feel safe, they feel involved. So thank you.
Great. Thank you, Christina. Great. All right. Mark up here is going to fall out of his chair, so let's go to table 11 and hear from Mark.
Thank you. So we talked about a lot of things at our table: education, protecting immigrants.
Mark, what ward do you live in?
Oh, I'm sorry. My name's Mark Rodefer. I live in Ward 6. We talked about education, protecting immigrants. The reason I came here tonight was because I wanted to ask the mayor to fully fund the Clean Energy DC Omnibus Act, which she signed just about a month ago. It'll transition DC to 100% renewable energy for electricity by 2032. It'll make our buildings a lot more efficient. It'll do a lot of stuff. And in terms of the resource section, it is almost entirely funded through this thing called the Sustainable Energy Trust Fund. There's a fee on dirty energy, and it's going to go up a little bit next year, and that's going to pay for most of it. So we ask to use that money to fully fund the Clean Energy DC Act. Don't sweep the money. It's happened before, although it's usually the council, not the mayor, who's done it, at least recently. So that's what we want. We want real action on climate change here in DC, and we really appreciate the mayor's leadership so far. And now it just needs to be implemented, and the budget needs to pay for it.
All right. Thank you, Mark. I also noticed that Director Wells is sitting right next to Mark, so I don't know if there's a connection there, but I think we should go to the back. I see table 20 is waving feverishly. Can we get to table 20? Oh, wait, Mike. So this is Emma Ward.
Test.
We'll get you a fresh mic there.
I'm one of the many people who represent the seniors here in Washington, D.C. I think I can speak on behalf of most everybody at our table. We talked about education. One of the things that we specifically talked about is that, you know, for the first time, our children are not in school 4 days during Black History Month. This week, they're out of school. But guess what? The problem has been resolved. We have the facts. We have one of the places that next year they're going to be here doing Black Facts. And if you look at the Washington Informer on page 11, it explains everything. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Emma. Prioritizing education. And I think we got time for one or two more tables. So which ones want to go? Which ones do we really want to be heard from? This is your chance. So you've got Mayor Bowser here, but all around the room, there's folks from the cabinet. All right, who's pounding on the table? Who's pounding on the table? 9? Okay, they could do it since they're very excited.
Oh, okay. So we talked about several things that are.
Oh, tell us your name and what ward you live in.
My name is Jennifer Mouzier. I am a brand new resident of Ward 6.
Great.
6.
Oh, Jennifer, come up a little bit. Jennifer's going to come up so the folks at home can see Jennifer. Let's give her a round of applause. She's got a great DC Value shirt on.
Y'all, I did not get dressed to be on TV. I've got.
No, it's okay.
But we came here to talk about several different things: housing, public safety, particularly community policing, environmental protections, and education, particularly education for birth to 3-year-olds. But I believe that all of those things come under, are impacted by one of our most vulnerable groups in this city, and that's immigrants who've been specifically targeted under administration. There are about 4,500 residents, longtime residents of DC, who are just one bad court ruling away from being considered illegal immigrants. There are long-term residents of our community who are also vulnerable to that. We're asking for $2.5 million to go to this group to make sure that all of those folks are taken care of, and we're particularly asking that there's no differentiation between our residents who are now being detained and our current members of the community who are here in DC as well. All of them are part of our community.
Great. All right. Great. Thank you, Jennifer. All right, so we're getting close to, it's 8:20, so we want to make sure we're mindful of everybody's time, but we could do 2 more tables. So why don't, that one? Wow. Well, another table just rooted for another table, so we're going to try that then. We'll go with your suggestion and go to table 5. And you should give a shout out to table 1. They voted for you.
Okay, my name is George Olivar. I would like to increase housing for Latin seniors. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, George. Fantastic. All right. All right, we got time for one more table. Let's see. Let's go 23.
Hi, everyone. My name is Catherine Gorman.
And 23 is right back there.
Hi, I live here in Ward 2. I'm here on behalf of the Way Home campaign, and I wanted to ask the DC government to fund $35.5 million to end chronic homelessness by the end of Muriel Bowser's
Catherine, just come up a little bit so we can see in the camera. Okay, great.
Ending chronic homelessness is a possibility by the end of Muriel Bowser's second term. We ask that you put $35.5 million towards ending chronic homelessness to get folks into housing first so that they can get their jobs and make their way up. But we ask that we put housing first for those folks. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Catherine. So you can see there's a good mix of folks who have come with different priorities that all fit somewhere into these, but it also shows that there are sometimes really tough decisions that the folks like Jenny Reed and her team on the budget team and the city administrator, Rashad Young, in the back, make sure you give him your 2 cents on the way out too. But for all these folks who are gathered here and the mayor's directors, there are sometimes going to have to be trade-offs because the budget has to be balanced. And even when we do new revenue, there were a couple folks who mentioned that. I think maybe it was Jennifer and Emma. mentioned that. We still have to find some trade-offs. So what we're going to do is we're going to open up another question for you guys. And it's a question that's a little bit long, but I'm going to try to read through it. That if you were in charge of the district's budget and had to increase funding for affordable housing, so that new revenue idea, right? If you had to increase funding for it, there are going to be a couple choices for you. One, you can reduce support for other projects like schools, public safety, health or human services in order to fund it. I would create a special tax on properties over $1 million and use those revenues for affordable housing. Now, your applause helped, but we definitely want you to vote on the app as well. So open your phones, your tablets. I would increase taxes on all homes and commercial properties to support affordable housing. Okay. I would give private developers the right to build taller buildings in my neighborhood as long as more of those units were affordably priced. And then affordable housing is not a priority for me. I'm not sure if we're going to hear that one here. But let's make sure we vote. We'll keep the voting open for a couple more seconds. Is anybody having trouble voting? I'll tell you while you vote that we're going to keep the presentation from tonight. We're going to put it up on mayor.dc.gov/fairshotfebruary. So that's where you can see that presentation and where you could find it later at home. All right, so we're going to close out the voting. And let's see which one performed the best. All right, we stop the voting? All right. So it looks like it's the one that we create a special tax on properties that are over $1 million and use those revenues for affordable housing. With 69%. All right. So here's one that's a little bit tough. And so we heard from a lot of folks around the room, and we would love to hear from even more. But we heard from Christina, Mark, Emmer, Jennifer, George, Catherine, and others. But they all gave us one of the priorities. So we're going to put the question to you that if you were in charge of the DC budget, which of the following programs would you be most willing to increase investments in? So you can only pick one, right? That's the hard part here. Would you support an affordable, a workforce development program for unemployed district residents with a proven track record of success? Okay. Would you rather fund an experimental program to expand rat abatement efforts that shows promise but is still untested? Or a children's health literacy initiative that brings families together in a group setting, but the educational program itself has shown to be ineffective in its current design? Or would you fund a new program providing educational and housing benefits to returning citizens that could reduce and address violent crime in the district, but has not been tested in other cities? So you see, these are kind of the tough trade-offs that we have to think about when we go into the budget season. So take a moment to vote. How about 10 more seconds of that? And then after that, we're going to call up Mayor Bowser to wrap us up for the night. But before we do that, will all the cabinet members or government employees who are here stand up just to be recognized for your work? And for the folks at the tables, those are the folks you want to whisper your last priority to. You want to tell them what's most important to you and say, take this back to the mayor, take this back to Rashad, take it back to Jenny. All right? All right, so we'll close out the voting now. And let's see, this was really close. This one was really close. And what you all prioritized, but we'll read both. How about we read both, since it was 47-46. It was A, which was a workforce development program for unemployed district residents with a proven track record of success. Who voted for that one? By a show of applause? Where are you? Okay. And then the one, which is kind of a statistical tie, but lost by 1%, was a new a new program providing educational and housing benefits to returning citizens that could potentially reduce and address violent crime in the district, but has not been tested in other cities. Where are those folks? All right. Great. Well, we appreciate it. So everybody, just so you know that all the information that you saw tonight is going to be up on the website, as well as how you voted. We'll post that up there as well. So it's going to be at mayor.dc.gov/fairshopfebruary. And for the rest of the month, be sure to try out that free circulator brought to you by Mayor Bowser.
Well, I want to thank you all for your participation. I heard a lot of good information at the tables. And I think that probably more than in even years before, people at the various tables had very specific recommendations about the programs and services that they want to see funded. I did ask some additional questions of you about the programs that you're advocating. Like, what exactly do you think will happen in the first year for some of those programs and services? What would you think is an effective measure for us to look at the end of the year if that program was funded? And if you think this will improve how equitably we're growing as a city, because that is my primary focus, and that's what I'm asking my team, which each of the recommendations that they are bringing to us. So I want to thank you for being a part of this, giving us one of your evenings. Tell your neighbors and coworkers that they have additional opportunities, and we'll see you across all 8 wards. Thank you, everybody.